Let's do some basic rudimentary definitions of probability to get us started. So first we have a probability experiment. That is any process with uncertain results that can be repeated. So anything you can do over and over. And of course, classic examples of this are dice and cards and things like that. But of course, it even works in real life with things like cancer patients and stuff like that. And we'll talk more about that as the chapter goes on and actually through the rest of the course, to be honest. Probability is the proportion of times the event occurs in the long run. If you repeat the experiment over and over and over and over and over, that probability is a measurement of the likelihood that that event is going to occur, right? But of course, it's the measurement of likelihood of events that have yet to occur because nothing is in the past. Everything's about the future. The symbol for an outcome is capital O for outcome, and the abbreviation for probability is P parentheses O. And if you've been in algebra class, that looks familiar, hopefully, because that's a function notation, because probability is a function. So it's the probability of O, of outcome O. So you're not multiplying here, it's of, is what you're seeing. So the probabilities can be written as decimals. So you can write 0, 0.3, or you could write a percent, 30%, or you could write it as a fraction, 3 out of 10, or 1 out of 10, etc. Right? Or 1 even. All right, now the sample space is the collection of all possible outcomes. So everything you could have. All right, so let's look here. We have an American roulette wheel, and we're going to use roulette through the whole of chapter 5, and actually some in chapter 6 as well. And in the notes, we're going to use American roulette. Now, an American roulette wheel has 38 spaces total. There's 1 through 36. They're scattered, but there's 1 through 36. And there's a 0 and a 0, 0. And those two are green in color, whereas the rest of the numbers are all alternating red and black. So, if a casino claims that their roulette is fair, and quite frankly, usually they are because they don't need to rig it. It's already rigged in the way that you bet, and we'll see that a little bit more later. So the roulette wheel is fair. What that means is that every one of the spaces is equally likely, right? So the ball is just as likely to land in any one space. The ball, because that's how it works. You have a little ball, little metal ball, and it rolls around the wheel, and it lands in one of the spaces. The ball is likely equally likely to land in any one space. There, maybe that's a little bit better. Or the ball has an equal chance. How about that? Has an equal chance of landing. There we go. That's a little bit better English. Of landing in any given space, in any one space. All right, so what is the sample space? Well, there's the 0, 0, and then the 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it goes on until you get to 36. And I just didn't write them all because, we all have other things to do with our lives. But it starts with 0, 0, and 0. Those two are kind of special. And then it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on, all the way up to 36. All right, so now we want to find the probability of 4. 4 is right over here on this right-hand side. So let me give it a little circle. There it is right there. That's slot 4. So what's the probability that the ball will land in that particular spot? Well, there's one spot with a 4 on it out of 38 total. So that would get you 1 out of 38, which if you grab a calculator, you can see is 0.0263 and some change. So I just rounded it to 0.0263 or 2.63%. It's pretty common in probability to do at least 4 decimal places. So, as a matter of fact, I'll make a note of that real quick. Sometimes we'll actually do more depending on the situation, but in general, we do at least 4. I mean, unless it doesn't have 4 decimal places. All right, you just learned some basic probabilities. Sample space, how to find a very simple probability, write it as a decimal, a fraction, a percent. We're good. Okay, so now what about an event? So we don't really, we care about single spaces like 4, but what we really want to do is be able to collect them together in different combinations. That's how gambling works. That's how a lot of things work. You don't just get one type of cancer. You get a cancer that spreads to all sorts of different places, things like that. So any collection of outcomes from a probability experiment, that makes an event. So you can collect them in different ways. In games, they tend to collect on particular patterns. So an event may consist of one outcomes or many outcomes. If it has one outcome, that's called a simple event. If it's only one, in general, we denote them with capital letters like capital E for event, F for event, G. We tend to go in order. All right. Now, we are going to learn over the course of Chapter 5 how to place bets in American Roulette. Not because I expect you guys to all go to a casino. As a matter of fact, you'll figure out real quick that you probably shouldn't bet on roulette if you pay much attention to this course. But nevertheless, it's a pretty easy game to figure out. So we have the roulette board here. This is the roulette betting board. And you're going to place your chip on the dozen bet. So let me explain this. So the way the roulette board works is it has all these numbers listed out. 0 and 0, 0 up at the top. And you place your chip, your little round plastic disc, wherever you want to bet. So if you want to bet on 4, you'd place your chip on 4. If you want to bet on 2, you place your chip on 2. If you want to bet on this corner right here, that would be betting on all 4 of those numbers. Things like that. There's all sorts of different bets. We'll talk about them more a little bit later. But we want to place a bet on the second dozen. That means you put your chip right here in this little green box that says second 12 on it. Some boards say second dozen, some boards say second 12. And what that means is you're placing your bet on all the numbers in that box. So that means 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. That is the second dozen. First dozen being 1 through 12, the third dozen being 25 through 36. So the event E, the second dozen, is these dozen numbers, and there should be 12 of them there. Yep, there's 12, I just counted. All right, now is this a simple event? Oh, no, 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 it's not, right? Simple event is one that can only happen one way. The 4 that we were doing up here, that's a simple event, right? So you can make a note, right? Note 4 is, right, is a simple event. Hold on. There we go. So it's a simple event because it can only happen one way, 4, and that's it. Whereas down here, the second dozen can happen 12 ways. So if that ball lands in any one of those 12 slots, you win. So if you can win 12 ways, that's not simple. So there we have it. So there are 12 ways to land on the dozen, not just one. Okay. So now we want to find the probability of event E. So what's the probability of landing on that second dozen? Well, there's a dozen ways to win there, so that's 12. And there's 38 slots total for the roulette wheel. So that's 12 out of 38, which is 0.3158 or 31.58%. And I got that by using my calculator. 12 divided by 38. Oops, 12 divided by 38. There we go. It's 0.3158, again, rounding to 4 decimal places. All right, now just one more quick note about roulette bets before we leave it. We are going to see this again and again and again in this chapter, and I actually have them listed for you in Appendix B. There's the 2 roulette wheels. There's a European roulette wheel, which only has 1 zero space, and the American roulette wheel, which has 2. That makes the betting actually quite different. The American roulette wheel is much less fair for the player. You're better off playing roulette in Europe than you are in America, and it's actually quite a popular game in European casinos. And then here are all the different bets. So far, we have seen a straight up bet. A straight up bet is when you bet on a single number. For our examples, it was 4. So we did a straight up bet on 4, and then we also did a dozen bet, where we bet on one of the 3 sets of dozen numbers. So those are the 2 bets you've seen so far, but there are all sorts of different bets you can place with different odds, and we'll see a lot of them through the course of Chapter 5, and then the rest you'll just have to know from reading this over in the appendix. All right, we're done with that example. I'm going to go back here, and we'll stop right there, and I'll see you in the next video for empirical probability. See you then.